So, welcome. Thank you for being with me. If you watched the first three videos on why God instituted marriage, then to me, it seems like you're one who is intentional about having your marriage well rooted. And my prayer is that God will root your marriage so firmly, so deeply in Him that generations down the line they will enjoy the blessings and the ripple effect of a well-rated marriage. So today we'll be discussing conflict resolution in marriage. The truth is, marriage is about the place that can generate the most conflicts. And after you've been married for a while, you would be shocked at how often you can also get offended. And I believe the conflict would happen so often because one, as married couples, you no longer live parallel lives. I mean, you just have to go together. And on some levels, there may be one of the couple who is not willing to go. That's the way I say it. Who is not willing to follow that path. So that many times that may generate conflict. And you know when the Bible says iron sharpeneth iron. Sometimes the act of conflict is a blessing in disguise, just so that God can sharpen us into instruments that He intends to use us for. And as friction will make things smooth, conflict also sometimes can be ways that God will smoothen out impatience, smoothing out pride, smoothing out unforgiveness, smoothing out, you just name it, all sorts of vices, so that the virtues that God has deposited in us can begin to come to play. So we'll discuss how we can begin to resolve conflict in our marriages. And the first thing I have here is whatever it is that needs to be resolved. Be intentional about choosing the right time. Your aim is to win your spouse, not to win the argument. And I know culturally there are some unspoken tenets that has been handed down, that you wake the man in the middle of the night so you address the issue. No, you've just startled him. You've broken his sleep rhythm. If there's any issue that will be resolved, it really may not be resolved. It may just be that someone concedes just to be able to go back to sleep. It has not been resolved. It will probably show up maybe in another 2 weeks or in another 2 months. So there's something called the old principle. It means you would not want to resolve conflict, whether maritally or in any other relationship, with someone or you yourself. If you're hungry, you are hungry, you're lonely, you're tired. So you want to check off that, okay, none of this is happening at this moment with me or with my spouse before I bring up such conflicts that needs to be resolved. The truth is, when we're hungry or we're angry, nerves are raw. The ability to really resolve things is not too sound. Many times we're even more irritated, so we're irritable. And anger really can be unproductive in anything positive. So it is that could be that time when you just had the argument and both of you are huffing and puffing. That's not the time you say, now we must really sit and resolve this. Both of you should take a breather and come together at a better time. Then anger will cause something called amygdala hijack. It means the individual goes into a fight and flight mode. I mean, if you have a lion chasing you, you're either planning to fight or you're planning to take a flight. That's not the time to sit and start having some rational conversation. So in such state, one may not be able to get a lot out of such good intention to resolve conflict. So as such, you will want to be sure that you or your partner are not in any of those two states I talked about. Now, the rational mind would make sound judgments, sound decisions, because it processes informations a little more slower. That's in 500 milliseconds. Now, the emotional mind, a mind that is in amygdala hijack, will process in 2 milliseconds. That's like 250 times faster. So as you're speaking, he or she is processing it so fast, and has thought about it in so many different directions, some related, some not related, some not even coherent or rational. By the time he or she will respond to you, chances are you cannot really get the conflict resolved. It many times will rather get escalated. So you want to be sure that none of these two are happening at the time you want to resolve conflicts. Personally, I would even discuss with some people that why not take him or her out, let it be a surprise outing, so such that he or she is in a positive frame of mind. Then it can then be okay. So now there's this thing that has been on my mind, and when I would like us to resolve it. And if it's not someone who likes to go out, okay, can it be that you organize a cozy atmosphere where you know my partner, my spouse, my husband, my wife's mind is in that rational state that we can bring up a conflictual discussion and still be able to find resolution. You know, I said earlier, your aim is to win your spouse, not the argument. If you win the argument, chances are you have lost your spouse. So now, if the individual is also lonely and tired, is experiencing a lot of hassle at work or a lot of challenge in his or her business, or is just physically tired. I mean, the man comes home by 8 p.m. and is exhausted, and that's when the wife wants to sort out the issue. Or the woman has not slept all night because she was nursing a sick child, and the man wakes up in the morning and says, now we must trash this. This Saturday morning is the day I have planned to get it sorted. You planned it, she didn't plan it. And your body may be in a rested state and you may be in a better frame of mind to be able to discuss it, but she isn't. So you will not have such an issue de-escalated. You rather want to pick a proper time. So proper rest is essential for conflict resolution because the attention, the focus is better that time. You know, when James chapter 1 verse 2 to 5 says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work in you, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. Patience has to be perfected in us, in the covenant of marriage, if it will work. The truth is, except death do you part. You have the entirety of your life to be with this man, to be with this woman. So when some conflicts feel so urgent, if there is nobody's life at risk, I tell you, they are really not as urgent as they seem. It is our emotional state, amygdala hijack again, makes you feel like that we're in danger. I must solve this or not. I mean, how can she take me for granted? How can she disrespect me like so? You will still be with this woman for the next 40 years. And she will still honor you and still respect you, that in 10 years time that memory seems like a mirage. So patience has to really have its perfect work in us if we're going to really enjoy the ministry of marriage. So loneliness, tiredness will not be good time. You want to look for a more appropriate time. So before you want to bring up such, and if it then look like, okay, when is it going to ever be an appropriate time? That's why James says, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives liberally. So if that means this thing, you go to God in prayers, this thing is really burning me up, or I'm really vexed, or I'm really scared, or whatever your emotional state is, take it to God in prayer and ask God, give me wisdom as how to bring this up with my spouse and how we can find resolution to this. It could be a recurrent conflict, it could be a one-time conflict, but by all means, tell God about it before you even tell your spouse, and tell God more about it than you tell your spouse. You know, it says the heart of man is like the ocean, and it directs the course as it pleases. So your spouse's heart is also like the ocean waves in God's hands, and it will direct the course as it pleases. But will you take the pains to seek his own insight on it, to seek his own input, before we say, no, I must order it the way I want? And at the end of the day, please, regardless of any conflict it is, for someone who values the covenant of marriage, your aim should always be that I want to win my spouse, not the argument. So that's the first thing you want to keep in mind. Choose the right time when there's a conflict that needs to be resolved. The second thing is, you want to remember to stay in the here and the now with one issue at a time. You know, it could be that maybe the man today raised his voice at the wife and embarrassed the wife in public. He did it today. and the issue is supposed to be resolved maybe today or whenever. Now, as the wife, he may have done it last month and maybe upper month, and also put you down maybe 6 months ago and maybe a number of times, and I want to believe you feel sad about it, or probably angry, whatever the emotion that may follow from such an experience for you. But if your aim is to discuss the one that happened today, you stay with that in the here and the now, because today's problems are enough to deal with. When the Bible says, therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself, it could also have said, do not worry about yesterday, for yesterday will worry about itself. Because many times when we bring it from the past, apart from the fact that validly there could be some emotions around it, many times we also bring it back with grudges that are based on past resentment. Usually it will affect our ability to see the reality in this current situation. So the grudge blows the current situation out of proportion, that it almost seems like an unresolvable conflict, or we expect more, you will expect more in return than the grievance that has occurred. And many times the partner may not even remember as much of what it is that you're bringing back. So if the aim is to resolve one conflict, we'll resolve that here and now, and not bring back so many layers, because grudges will ultimately create bitter roots. And if we say we want God to flow through that marriage, God will not flow through bitter roots. So it will not allow the positive fruits of the Holy Spirit. And the truth is, most people hold grudges. You know, I said it earlier that marriage would test everything you have, that you would even be shocked at how much conflict can be generated in a relationship by people who once said they love themselves. Okay, but like I said, everything works together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. So now most people who keep grudge, it puts a lot of strain, both mentally and emotionally. It's almost like it tapers and ties the person down to the incident that is long gone. It's the same thing with malice. It's like drinking poison and expecting another person to die. It's not the best in marriage. It begins to tear the very fabric of the covenant of marriage. So within grudges, you become very tied emotionally to such a situation. You cannot really be rational. Okay, so what was my own part in that? What could I have done to begin to unravel the tapestry of that conflict? Was it all entirely based on what my partner did? Is my emotion entirely justifiable if I consider it in light of what I also did to contribute to such a conflict? Because once we are stuck in grudge, in bitterness, many times it's difficult to move forward with conflict resolution. So in the here and the now, you want to remember to keep one issue on the discussion table at a time. Even if the issue is similar to the one that happened last week, upper week, last month, last year, don't mumble everything together. Don't say it's the same way you also did that one down last week, and even upper week, and even when my sister came and she saw you did that, then my mother was even. Let's stay with the one that is happening here and now and deal with that. Because this, for men, usually they oftentimes happen to be the victim of drowning effect. They can't speak as many words as a woman will speak. They cannot process as many words as a woman would process, because I think it's just the way they've been constructed by God. So once a man gets drowned, he just checks out. So if he still respects and honors the marriage, he will sit there, but his mind is not there. It's just the wife who is resolving the conflict alone. Okay. So the third one is you want to stay in the I pronoun. You know, there are some statements that are called you statements. Example, you are always late. Waiting for you is pointless. Counting on you to come home in time is never going to happen. You continue to disappoint me by not keeping your word. You don't care about anyone except yourself. Use statements attack the individual that you're trying to resolve a conflict with. If you're trying to come together with me so that we can work towards a common goal, and you start to shoot arrows at me, I would either begin to fight back or I take a flight. So you put your spouse in that position to, again, either escape or attack you. Is one of the two. Rather, you want to use I statements. I statement will allow you to take responsibility, would allow your own responsibility for your own behavior, would also allow them to take responsibility for their own behavior, but it allows you to take responsibility for your feelings. Example could be, I feel embarrassed and unvalued when you shouted at me. So then, I would want to appreciate you don't shout at me next time if you have to communicate something to me. And if you do that subsequently, I would walk away. Not because I don't value you, but because I value myself. And I would not want to sit in such an environment with you while you keep shouting at me. Okay? I have not said you're always shouting. You don't see any good in other people. You shout at other people. You always feel so proud of yourself. It is just you statement. I address the way it makes me feel. I stay with the issue on ground. Then I state what I want to happen going forward. So when you use the I statement correctly, you remove accusatory tone in the statement. You allow the person to express a point without getting defensive. So when you use I statement, the person can then say, oh, I'm sorry that I shouted at you. I was just pissed off, or I was just stressed, or I was just exhausted. Okay, subsequently I will not do that, because I have not come with a tone of accusation. I have not come with the intention of attacking the very individual that I'm trying to resolve conflicts with. So there are three important components to I statement. You state your feeling. I don't like it when you shout at me. It makes me feel not really valued. I would not really want to keep tolerating that. Then you connect it with the issue on ground. You could have spoken to me in a better way. You could have taken some breath before you talk to me, then stating what you want to happen. Going forward, I really will not want you shouting at me. If it keeps happening, take it that I will take a walk. Not because I do not respect you, but because I value me too. So it could be resolved in as simple as that. And then you give the person opportunity to respond. So the ability to own your own feeling will now allow your spouse to hear more vulnerability and honesty, because now you're really digging deep into the complexity of that issue for you. And if you can really dig deep into the core of you, you give the person opportunity to also dig deep into himself or herself. And then you will be able to give each other listening ear and mutual respect. So this will allow for a much stronger possibility of your spouse engaging in dialogue and, of course, eventual resolution of the conflict in question. Then the fourth principle you want to keep in mind is attack the problem, not the person. You know, after a while of being married, people begin to take their spouse for granted and just feel, I think it's for better for worse now. He or she will take any junk I put on them. No, it's not right, it's not godly, it's not biblical, it's not humane. And most people would only take it so long till they take a walk. It's not the best. So labels like he's stupid, he's a slob, or saying things like I don't want to be around you anymore, or even things like you always, you never. You always, you never, they're called cognitive distortions, because there's nobody who always and there's nobody who never. It's like you always come late. It's not true. There are probably like 10% of the time that individual comes early, or like you never help around the house. That's not true. If you really check well, there may be 2%. So it is not never at the end of the day. Or statements like you call yourself a husband. I mean, that is just attacking the very, that's below the belt. I don't know what word to use again. So there's an issue that's happened that you're deeply disappointed as a wife. But then you don't begin to ask him questions like you call yourself a husband. So who is he? Is he a wife? Is he a brother? Is he a pastor? Is your husband? So if you're not pleased with what he has done, please don't attack the very nature, the very identity of the person that God has called you to work in unity with. So you want to attack the problem, not the person. If you see that your comments are aimed at making the person feel small, your intentions are misdirected, is not to resolve that conflict, I tell you. So now when agitation occurs, you want to know that there could be risk of you attacking the person and using inflammatory words. So sometimes you may need to take a break, take a breather, even excuse yourself and come back when you know you're a bit calmer. So of course, when you then take that breath or the break, you ask yourself, what do you want from this conflict resolution? Do you want your partner to understand you better? Do you want to feel closer to your partner? Or you want an apology? Of course, you have to state how it makes you feel, how you think it could have been done, and the fact that I think I deserve an apology. Or do you want to punish your partner by making them feel guilty? Or you want to shame them? Or you want to wound them as much as they have wounded you? Truth is, if I have a cut here and I go pursuing the person who cut me with the intention of giving the person the same cut in the same location, how does that help me? No. My own wound is still there that needs to be dealt with. And of course, I then have the added guilt of I have wounded another person. So hurting another person because you've been hurt, especially your spouse in this case, is a no-no. Note that if irritation and attack happen, such as with question 4, like do you want to punish your partner by making them feel guilty, shameful, or hurt, it really will be very difficult for you to achieve your aim in number 1 and 2, which is, do you want your partner to understand you, what you felt from that experience, what you took away from that experience, how you want it done subsequently. Do you want the partner to feel closer to you? Because the aim of resolution is that so that we can come closer. I mean, there has been a friction. Both parties have gone some distance. And now we want to come back together by resolving the conflict. So if you bring frustration and an attack to the person of your spouse, you won't be able to achieve 1 and 2. So it's important you take a breather, reflect, then of course you come back implementing 1, 2, 3 to address the conflict that may be on ground. Then the fifth one is active listening. The issue could have happened and then the spouse is explaining and you just keep interrupting in between. No, it's not like that. No, you're not correct. This is what I saw. Let the person land now. Let the person land. So it means you are doing active listening. And even if everything is boiling up in you, listen first. If it's boiling up in you, chances are that's not the time to resolve the conflict, because then, first principle, you are angry. That will not be a time to resolve the conflict. Then if you're listening, you cannot also be fidgeting with your phone. Sometimes you want to even give some encouraging response. Yes, okay, I know, I understand. No, I don't understand. Could you please repeat that? Okay, so what I heard you say so far is this and this happened, then this and this happened. Okay, now I understand. Please go ahead. Just so that the person feels that you're following him or her. If you want to do a role reversal, if it's you that wants to also express something that is really deep in your heart to someone, you find that the person is looking away or discussing with the children or writing something down or trying to send a message or making a call, you just put it off and feel there's no point. So you also want to keep eye contact. You face your spouse and you watch them in the eye. The truth is, even if the conflict has not been resolved, the fact that you could give that undivided attention, your spouse begins to feel appreciated and respected. Eventually, some conflict, when both of you are done, feels like it wasn't even conflict to begin with. Like, why were we now bothering ourselves? Because somebody was just intentional to give the attention that was never given in the first place. Okay? So when the Bible says, if one gives an answer before he hears, it is folly and shame. That is what happens when we begin to interrupt. When we begin to complete people's statements for them. I didn't write that. Solomon did. Then James chapter 1 verse 19 says, know this, my beloved brethren. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. When God gives us 2 ears and 1 mouth, it's because he knows that we would need to listen twice than we will speak. So if you want to do listening ratio versus speaking, Really, if we all did that in marriage, I'm sure there wouldn't be as many conflicts. So that takes care of the first part of this conflict resolution. Join me next week for the second part. I wish you a healthy, happy, God honoring marriage. Thank you for staying with me. Bye.